Hello, everyone. My name is Christopher Dedeyan. I'm the founder and CEO of Dedeyan Enterprises, as well as being a professional speaker, peak performance coach, and a learning disability advocate. Catch me on the latest Jesse T show, where we talk about so many great things when personal growth, brain hack, and so on. See you soon.
Chris, what is going on, brother? Welcome to the Jesse T show.
Jess, my brother, it is such a pleasure being on the show. Just from the previous conversation we had together, I know we're going to have a blast.
Yeah, man, tons of energy too. Like as soon as I started talking to you, I felt my energy was good, but like you've helped me to bring it to another level. So it's going to be energetic. It's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. And just to give the world a little bit of context, who are you? What have you done? And what brought you to this point today?
Yes, thank you for that. So my name is Christopher Dedeyan. I am a professional speaker, peak performance business and life coach, as well as being a learning disability advocate. So essentially every single day, all I do is have great conversations with people such as yourselves, talk to my clients on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, go give keynotes to Fortune 500 companies and beyond, and just help people become peak performing individuals in every area of their life, from their personal life to their business.
I know a bit of your story, and so I know where a little bit of this fire comes from, but talk to us a little bit about how you got started on this journey of self-improvement, of being an advocate for learning disabilities, of basically getting to where you are today.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jess. And honestly, I'm going to have to take it back to when I was 8 years old. So at that time, my parents realized that I was having difficulties at school. They were comparing me a lot to my sister, which she's 2 years older than me. And they're realizing that I wasn't reading to the same level as her, even though I was putting the effort. So they got me tested, and finally the test results came back, and it came back as dyslexic. So I got diagnosed at 8 years old. Now, at that point, my parents did a bit of research, tried to figure out what dyslexia was, and they found this ideal school in the greater region of Montreal, where I live in Canada, that this school was actually specialized for students with learning disability. So at 8 years old, brother, they come and see me in the middle of the school year, and they tell me, Chris, we're going to put you in a specialized school that's going to help you out. Now, at 8 years old, all I understand is I'm losing my friends and I'm going to a special school. Like, I don't want that. I don't even understand what dyslexia is as an 8-year-old kid. But at that point, I knew something was happening. I was still cognitive enough to really realize that, okay, if I want to succeed in the schooling education system, I'm going to have to give 2 to 3 times more effort than somebody that doesn't have learning disabilities. So, brother, the first thing I realized once we got into the school is that I wasn't alone. There's like hundreds of kids like me in the school. So I started being more familiar with dyslexia. I started learning how to deal with it and what's the proper way and tools to utilize so I could succeed in the education system that we were given. So I started succeeding, figuring out that really learning disabilities is nothing other than just a different form of learning. And then going forward towards that, started really becoming successful in the school. Now, as everybody at the end of your high school, when you get close to it, you start thinking about what's the next step, right? What am I going to study? What am I going to do in college, university, and beyond? So as I was looking into that, I found one career that really interested me, being a lawyer, because I like wearing nice clothes. I like talking. I'm like, yeah, this is so up my alley. As I was researching that career, I realized that like 95% of the job is reading and writing. So for people who don't know what dyslexia is, it's learning disability that has to do with reading and writing. So you have so much more difficulty when it comes to that. So knowing that, I'm like, no, I'm not going to go into a career that demands that. So I started looking for a career that has very limited reading and writing or none at all. So what I found was fireman. I'm like, oh, yes, that's cool. I'm going to help people, the fire truck, the boys. I'm like, yes, the adrenaline. I'm like, sign me up. So going to the academy, go out of the academy, and it took me several years to get into it, but started succeeding into that. Started working in a company called Pratt & Whitney Canada, which is a company that is airplane motors, and I was becoming an industrial fireman there. So I was a security agent becoming industrial fireman. As I was doing that, Jesse, I realized that the universe had put me on this planet for more than what I was doing. There was something missing. I couldn't pinpoint it at that point. I was in my early 20s, and I was kind of feeling lost. That's the point that for the first time in my life, I picked up a book and I read it by myself, by my own choice. Like obviously in school, you have to read some stuff, but by my own choice. The first book that I ever read was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. The second one was Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And these books opened up my eyes and my ideologies to something I've never tasted before, which is personal development, right? So as I went to that, I realized that my whole life, the universe was preparing me to be an entrepreneur, but I was repressing it, calling it out of practicality because I was putting it down due to fear. Oh, I can't read, I can't write, I can't do this, I can't be an entrepreneur, I have to have a job. But looking back at it, I remember when the teacher used to come into the classroom and say, kids, put yourself in teams of even before she finished the word 3, I had my head up. I was looking for who reads the best in the class, who writes the best. Let's put a team together. Let me delegate the work and let's get the grade together. Delegation 101, entrepreneurship. I remember just when I was in college and I was failing, I used to go see the professor after the class and I used to negotiate my grade up. I used to be like, oh no, that's not what I meant. This is what I meant on the thing. I used to get my grade up.
Yep.
So this is negotiation 101. So my whole life, I realized, hey, I'm meant to be an entrepreneur. That's what life was preparing me for. So I went into entrepreneurship as a real estate broker. Now, going into that, definitely loved it. Once again, anybody that starts a business knows the first couple of years is rock and roll. And that's what it was for me as well. It took me a year and a half to actually make some significant income within that career. The first year and a half, I was literally paying to be a broker.
Yep.
Then it started exploding, brother. And I'm almost done over here, my rant, just giving you the whole picture.
This is your time. Keep going.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, brother. So at that point, I was in my mid-20s, succeeding quite well as a real estate broker, succeeding in the concept of what society says is success, the money, the car, the condos, all that's fun stuff. And then my speech therapist that used to follow me in high school gave me a call to ask me a question about a real estate property. And a few minutes after talking about the property, she's like, Chris, how's it going with you? Now, like I said, I was in that peak. I was like, oh my God, it's going great. And as you guys are seeing, I could definitely go on rants. So I went on a long rant with her. I'm like, everything's amazing. After that rant, she's like, Chris, I'm the keynote speaker at this event put together by the Learning Disability Institute of Quebec. I would love for you to come and talk to us about how you are a successful dyslexic entrepreneur. Wow. I'm like, 100%, I would love that. Just that same evening, she sends me an email in the subject in big caps written, Chris, I don't think you should do this speech because there's still a lot of people that have a negative misconception of what dyslexia is, and you might lose some clients and you are new into the entrepreneurial space. Okay. Now, brother, I knew she was coming from a place of love. She was coming from a place of, she wanted to protect me. Now, when I read that, instantly I wrote to her, I'm like, listen, I think I should do this speech. I'll give you a call Monday telling you why that is. Yep. Monday rolls around, give her a call. I'm like, listen, Bridget, I'm like, if I'm not doing this speech right now, I would be fake. I won't be helping the kids that are on the school benches right now. I won't be helping the next generation. And I won't be helping my future kids because this is something hereditary. I'm like, I'm not fake. I need to do this speech. And she's like, oh my God, yes, I agree. I just wanted to come from you. I didn't want to force you into something. I'm like, 100%. Not only that, if ever I lose clients that don't want to work with me because I'm dyslexic, those aren't clients I want to work with.
No question.
I'm like, that's exactly it. So at that point, I'm like, Bridget, how many people are going to be at this event? She told me it's going to be about like 200. Now, granted, at this point, I've never done a real speech. Brother, I get to the day of the event. I open the door. I look left and right. And there isn't 200 people, bro. It's more like 1,000 people. Now, at this point, bro, my heart is beating through my chest. Sweat is coming down my face.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sitting down, speaker after speaker, doctor after doctor is coming on stage. And I'm like, what the heck am I doing here? Like, this is crazy. And then they call me up. They're like, Chris, please come on stage and present us your story. Now, brother, I don't think I have the proper words to describe what happened at that moment, but the best way I could describe it, it was like this divine moment. It was this like body exterior, like experience. Like my body kind of like was physically there, but my spirituality was in a different level. I specifically knew at that moment that that's what I was put on this planet to do. People were laughing, people are crying. I had standing ovations during the speech. After the speech, I get down, there's a lineup of people that are there and we're like, oh my God, I want to speak to you, and so on and so forth. At that moment, there was the Ministry of Education of Quebec that was there from the province that I'm at. And they started doing a work with me, as well as many other people that got my speaking career started. And at that moment on, I'm like, all right, cool. I have to shift everything that I'm doing. And this is what I have to do for the rest of my life. Yep. Everybody around me thought I was crazy because I had built a successful real estate business in my early 20s. And I was going to become one of the top end brokers within my own righteousness. And I let that going into the speaking career and coaching career, which is not something necessarily very known. So I gave you a long kind of explanation over here, but it kind of shows you the arc of how I became where I became with my dyslexia and beyond.
It's a very similar like congruence between our stories, because, you know, what I hear you saying, the things you've overcome, the things that you faced, it became your fuel, and it became, your story is your medicine. It's healing for you. And when you share your story, things that you may be shameful about because society says to be shameful about them, or maybe you won't be accepted because of whatever. When you start telling that story, you become free. You free yourself from yourself. So the shame, the guilt, the trauma that you've been holding on to for these things that you've experienced starts to become a lot lighter, and you become more free. And what happens is when you start sharing these stories of overcoming perseverance against all odds, and especially if it's a hard story to share, like I've had a crazy life journey in my own way, and there's some stuff that would be considered taboo in certain circles, but once I stopped giving a shit, it completely freed me and opened up so many beautiful relationships where when I would tell people as a wealth manager, think about this, as someone who's going to manage your investments in your financial future. And I used to do heroin for, 6 months, and I did drugs for 2 years, and I sold drugs as a younger person before going to the military. Think about how hard it was to tell that story and be pulled to share that story. So I completely feel you, brother. I feel where you're coming from. And I'll tell you, for me, man, it's made all the difference in my life, sharing my wounds, my successes, being completely, like you said, true to who you are and authentic for who you are, and having this tug on your heart or your soul to convey this message. It takes courageousness, but it takes vulnerability, and vulnerability is courage. And so I definitely just want to say thank you, because I know what it feels like, and I know how it is to basically come out of the shadows. And then what you're doing is you've stepped into your power.
Jesse, I mean, I couldn't have said it better. Congratulations on your end as well, because you've went through that life journey, and then you put yourself, like you said, vulnerable to speak about it, even though you might think that this is going to hinder you. But if you actually walk into it at a higher level, it's only going to attract more positivity. And not only that, not only for you, your business, my business, you know how many lives you can help with this? If it's only one person that hears your story of being an addict or having learning disabilities and be like, hey, if this person can do it, I can do it as well. Because we're not anybody that's like unnormal. Everybody could do it if you put the proper rituals, habits, methodologies, and work habit towards it. So man, thank you for sharing that, bro.
Yeah, my pleasure, brother. I remember when I got into speaking years ago, and it was new and it was scary because I hadn't done it at a certain level. I had a sales organization where I would get up in front of like 30 people that worked with me, and I would do morning meetings and that stuff. But like once you start getting into hundreds or thousands, it becomes a little bit daunting. And, I had a mentor at the time, Derek Colantonio, and Derek was just like, hey, if you can go into a room of 1,000 people, and like exactly what you just said, if you can change the life of just one person, you don't have to affect the life of everyone in there, but if you can change the life of one person in there, you've done your job as a human. And I've always carried that with me. It's not about, I need to impact everyone. It's let go of the outcome, surrender to who's going to be impacted, and just share the message. And obviously it seems like someone's always impacted. And so you're doing your job.
I mean, thank you for that. I really appreciate it. But that is the goal. That is the goal, as much as possible. Be authentic and bring massive value. Like one of my main pillars in my coaching methodology is create massive value, massive impact, then income follows, not the other way around. Yep. So if you have some entrepreneurs listening, a lot of people may perceive that, hey, you have to make money first and then I'll create impact, then I'll give back. No, it's completely the opposite. The more value you bring to the community, to the world, then you'll create more impact and then income will follow. So if you have that ideology to give, trust me, the universe will give back to you in some way, shape, or form.
What was your transition? 100%. I completely agree. It's the value that you add. It's the lives that you touch. It's the truth that you live. What was it like for you as you chased after this career, in a sense, as a real estate agent, and it brought you success financially and some of the things that came along with that financial success? What was there a transition period after going all in on the coaching, the speaking, the mentoring, the guiding? Was there a transition period, even financially or status of living kind of situation, where you had to kind of build a business from scratch, even though you had already done it? What was that transition like?
All right. So that's an interesting question. And once again, I'm going to be very transparent and honest here because I want people to get value out of this. It was difficult, that transition, 100%. And the way that I went about it, I'm somebody that's very intense in a sense, not in a bad way, but in a good way. Like if I do something, I'm doing it full on. Either I'm not doing it or I'm doing it. But there's
passionate too. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Like I'm not half pregnant. I don't believe in that. Either we're doing it or we're not. Right. Yeah. So if I, from that moment that I got off that stage, knew that, hey, this is what I have to do for the rest of my life, I started already my exit strategy for my real estate business. I could have stretched it out and done a more strategic transfer when I had more coaching clients, more speaking gigs. But I'm like, if I want to do this the way that I know that I could do it, I have to be 100% on that. So I did that transition. Now, throughout that transition, once again, like you said, anybody that's a business owner, knows that necessarily doesn't happen right off the bat. The first time you put your product out there, sells out or X, Y, and Z. And if that happens for you, beautiful. But even with that, we could unpack it to see that it took years to get to that one launch or whatever. So for me, after that period of letting go of the brokerage, it took me another year and a half to get back on top to where I was and beyond. Okay. And that year and a half just was extremely difficult because once you don't have something, you don't know what you don't have. Once you've tasted something and it's taken away from you, then you realize, oh shit, this hurts. Oh yeah. Like somebody that's never sat in first class in an airplane, they don't know what they're missing because they put the little curtain on front. So they don't see that they're getting cold, like nice, warm food, the extra service, the pillows and all that. But the second that you get upgraded and you sit in a first class, you're, oh, wow, this is amazing. Look how much space. And then the next flight, if you're taking coach, you're like, why is this so tight? Why is this person like sitting on my shoulder? What's happening here? You realize the difference. And that's what happened with me. I was making a significant amount of money. Then I went to a point that, holy moly, I have to start counting how much to make at the end of the month. To a point that, brother, like I was in my early 30s and my parents had to help me pay my grocery bill, which doesn't make sense to me. And I was freaking out. I'm like, yo, I'm doing this to help my parents and grow my future family's income and beyond. But at my early 30s, because I knew this is what I had to do, I went towards it. I was going through that pain point. Now, one last thing I'm going to say over here. Be careful for what you wish for, because you might just get it, right? We've heard of that. What does that mean? If you're asking from the universe to be extremely successful, let's say you want to be a millionaire, asking for $1 million from the universe. The second you ask from it, it's already yours. It's already sent your way. But before receiving it, maybe the universe, God, or whatever you believe is going to give you poverty. So then you understand what poverty is, what difficulty is. So once you get that riches, you won't lose it and you'll know how to appreciate it and utilize it with more value. So be careful what you wish for because you are getting it through the difficulties as well. So that was my process with that exchange or like from one career to another.
And then starting into the more the coaching, the leadership, the being a guide, essentially. How did that start for you? Were you doing one-on-one? Were you stepping into corporations where they would hire you to come in and do speeches? Like, how did that kind of snowball for you?
So honestly, that first speech that I did in March 2017, the one that I just explained previously, was the snowball effect because I was in front of 1,000 people and the people that were there they were all educators. They were all teachers. They were all principals. They were all directors. They were all politicians and business people. So from there, it started from, hey, can you come speak in my classroom? And I had no idea. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. They're like, oh, we'll pay. I'm like, no, I'll do this for free. And that's how it started. And I did one classroom to another. Then I went to the universities. Then I went into the speaking in front of professors. Then I went into corporate because I was already somebody from the corporate world, from the business world. And then from there, I'm like, all right, cool. I need to be doing this full time. So that's how it started. Now, the coaching side of things, I realized even when I was a broker, I was somebody that is extremely structured. I have great rituals, great habits. And the brokers around me were seeing me succeed. And they always used to come and talk to me and be like, hey, what time do you wake up? How do you do this? What are your rituals? How many prospecting calls do you do? How do you hire your employees? How do you do this, do that? And then I was giving them help. And I noticed the only way I could truly help these people is if I have consistent conversations with them. Yep. So that's when I left that, I'm like, the only way I could help somebody in a coaching frame is I have to have either weekly or biweekly or a certain structure of coaching with homeworks and giving that methodology. And if I'm able to do that, then people get the most results. So that's how it happened. The speaking first, then the coaching, now everything else that's linked up with it, my academy and beyond, and the employees within Dedeyan Enterprises.
It sounds like, when you first started out, your ethos now is performance, high performance. And it's also, you do have a calling for helping those with learning disabilities, but in terms of just the vein of speaking and coaching now, high performance seems to be a big part of it. And then also processes in place of XYZ. This is what you do if you follow this and, you do this way. Where did all that come from? I know that you have the affinity for learning, and I know that you had, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and Think and Grow Rich, some of the biggest books all time on, self-improvement and practicality, like when it comes to Robert Kiyosaki and, thinking differently about money and instead of being the poor dad, be the rich dad kind of thing. Where did you start implementing kind of the boots on the ground stuff? Because when you read something, that's one thing, right? And you can read all day long, or you can go to seminars all day long. You can go see Tony Robbins or Chris Dedeyan all day long. And then all of a sudden now you have to take that information and apply it in your daily life. What did that look like for you, for your own personal journey, where you could say, I've done this and then teach this to other people?
Yeah, I love that. So how that happened for me, once again, was when I was a broker right before that speech happened, maybe like 6 months before. And I was looking at all of my budget for the upcoming year as a broker within my business. And I had obviously budget for employees, budget for, I don't know, my car, for paperwork, for X, Y, and Z. And I had a marketing budget. Now, when I sat down on my marketing budget, I'm like, all right, cool. What can I do? I'm like, I could take this, put a picture of me on a billboard on the highway, be like, hey, go sell with Chris or whatever the case, like the standard broker thing. I'm like, okay, that could be cool. Could be cool for my ego and so on and so forth. And then I realized, I'm like, I could take this exact money and invest it in coaching, get myself a coach. It's 100% tax deductible. It's through the business because this is business coaching, personal coaching, and beyond. And what I'm going to gain from that is going to stay with me for the rest of my life. And not only for this career, but for everything else that I'll be doing in the future. Because I knew that this was a stepping stone. So for me, it was a no-brainer. So that's the first time that I hired my first ever coach.
Can you talk about that relationship for your coach real quick? Like who it was or company?
100%
what you learned? Yeah.
Beyond. So listen, right now I have 8 coaches and mentors in all different aspects and areas of my life. So I have my head coach, which is Trevor McGregor, which we're going to talk about in a second. That's the person I was alluding to, the first person that I started working with. I have my workout coach. I have my dietitian. I have my speaking storytelling coach. I have my business coach. I have my real estate coach from back in the day. Yep. I have like all these different categories, my spiritual coach and so on. So everything that I want to develop and work on, I find an expertise. Now, the way I look at it is kind of like a football team. I have my head coach. You have your offensive coordinator. You have a defensive coordinator. You have your quarterback, O-line, D-line, special teams, and so on. So that's the way I structure it. So my head coach is Trevor. Trevor, phenomenal individual. Been working with him for several years, business partners and so many things at this point as well. And the relationship was very interesting because it created my real hunger and knowing how to take what I had learned from, like you said, the books, from the seminars, and really put it into practice with Trevor. And I didn't even know at this point, I was just going to learn for myself. But what I was getting a like university degree on how to become a coach without even knowing it.
Yep.
And after I got that, that's when I was like able to, oh my God, wait a minute, I know what I'm doing. And I went into it. And I'm somebody, like we mentioned, very passionate, very intense. So when I went into it, I went full on. I do everything really at a high level. So I was able to acquire that knowledge at a fast level. So that's how it kind of started my coaching ideologies, learning. And I'm just somebody that's extremely curious, bro. Like I read a book a week. I do so many seminars. I'm somebody that loves these types of conversations, sit down with people, exchange philosophies and so on. So that develops new thought patterns and it develops new ideologies for me to learn and teach others.
What's the coaching style that you adhere to most as a student?
Okay. So kind of it's the coaching style that I adhere to as a student is the one that I coach as a coach. So essentially the reason why my coaching is peak performance coaching and it's not just business coaching or life coaching is because it's a mix of both. I truly believe it's one and the other are not like two different things. They're as one. Yep. You could be the best person in business and succeeding in business. But then if you walk into your home and your family life's off, your physical physique is off, your mental spirituality is off, your mindset is off, your time management is off, you're just failing as an individual. And it could be the complete opposite. If you're spiritually amazing, but every single month at the end of the month, you have a hard time paying your bills, that's not fun either.
Yep.
So high performance for me is that equilibrium in every sense of the way. So if you are able to wake up, present yourself as a phenomenal individual, what time you're waking up, what's your rituals, what's your habits, what are you doing to work out, how are you dressing yourself, before even walking into the office, before walking into your place of professionalism, you're going to be able to succeed so much more because you're vibrating at a different level, your frequency is differently, and you're attracting to vibratory rates other things, clients, employees, your loved ones, and beyond. So that's why it's a mix of both. And then from there, we talk about business. I could talk about business until tomorrow morning, the org charts, your systems and processes, what's the proper ways to communicate with your employees, how to delegate, so on and so forth. But before doing that, that's like that 20%. The 80% is the mindset and the ideologies that you need to get there. So that's why that's the one that I love the most. And that's the one that I coach when it comes to having a coaching stand for.
In terms of delivery of the coaching, are you someone, or do you prefer as a student, either way, someone that holds you accountable, someone that's kind of a little bit tougher on you? Or are you someone who's more of
Okay.
like a
I
Care
love
Bear and
that.
has your back and pushes you along? Like, how are you?
Okay. So as a coach, all of the above. So here's the thing. And I always tell this to my clients as well. Listen, I'm here to support you, to encourage you. I'm here as well to keep you accountable and to kick you in the butt when needed. It's all of it.
Yeah.
Like I'm super empathetic. So if like somebody says, hey, you know what? I didn't have time to do this week's homework because of X, Y, and Z. All right, cool. No problem. I understand. Life gets in the way, things get in the way. If it happens another week and another week, I'm like, nah, fam, you are paying me to get results and bring this level. Who would I be to accept this?
Right.
Not
True.
at all. And I cannot accept it because it's not going to get you the result you want. So I keep your hand to the fire and we're like, hey, what's the true thought? So it's that mix of both. I have coaching calls, me as a client. And sometimes it's like, hey, supporting and all that. And sometimes like, yo, Chris, what the F are you doing? Wake up and smell the coffee. So both of those are super important. And the way that works best is how eloquent and good of a coach is able to really realize the person in front of you, what's the best way they learn. Yep. And now the way that I go about this, obviously I get all my clients to do personality tests and through working with them and so on and so forth. So then I figure out some people like thrive when you're like in their face and pushing them and intense in that regards. Some people, if you're like that, they'll shut down and they'll go, they won't work out. So you have to find different ways to communicate with them. So for me, I have to understand the first thing is how my client learns. What's the best way? Is it visual? Is it auditory? Is it kinesthetic? Is it X, Y, and Z? Perfect. When I push him towards this, how does he respond? How's he feeling with that? And as I'm able to figure this out, then it's a coach to kind of balance that as a leader, as a business person and beyond.
I'm curious. You used the word homework a couple of times, and I'm someone who was thankfully able to get through high school. But I did it without doing much work. and I did it like you. I learned my sales skills early on. I learned that negotiation. I learned, different, tactics to basically use my people skills, which, in the beginning was good. And then I realized later on in life, I needed to kind of reshape some of those work ethic habits. And I did, but the term homework just kind of doesn't land well with me. So what does homework look like for your clients and whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, and what are some of their tasks and showing that they're growing and they're leveling up, that they're kind of on pace?
All right. So great spot out, because honestly, homework, the word doesn't resonate with me either, but it's the only word that when I say it, people know exactly what it is. It means it's work that you're going to do off of the call. It's as simple as that. Well, people associate, some people, a negative perception of what homework is because they associate what homework was when you're in school. Oh my God, I have English class, I have to write an essay. That sucks. I have to do some math homework, algebra. That sucks. Like whatever you didn't like, you associate with. So when I'm saying homework, like I mentioned, is just work you have to do off the call. But what that work is all your personal development and your business development. So what we're doing is I'm not giving you stuff to do that's like, oh my God, an added extra X amount of hours per week. No, it's all structuring your business. It's like, hey, what's your system and process within your business? How can you do that better? Okay, you're going to hire somebody. How do you structure your hiring process? Who are you looking for? Things like that. And then personal development things. We look at, hey, what's your goal for the next year? How to go get that goal? How to break it in manageable steps? What you need to do every single day? Okay, perfect. You want fitness? What's your fitness goal? Beyond and so forth. So it's all things that are linked up with that person and all things that that person is very passionate about and wants. Because I don't work. Listen, I'm going to say this, and I think you are probably there as well, just within your business. I'm in a position within my life that not only the clients get to choose to work with me, but I get to choose to work with the clients.
100%.
And that creates such an interesting dichotomy on the aspect of the people that want to work with me are wanting these things. So when I'm giving it to them, they're like eating it up. And I look at that through the process of when I get on calls with them to see, is this a proper fit? Because sometimes I could be in front of somebody and I'm like, hey, I'm not the right fit for you for X, Y, and Z reasons.
100%.
Maybe they have a goal that I don't know how to get there or whatever the case. And if that's the case, I'm going to refer them to somebody else or whatever the case is. But I get that process kind of figured out. So the second that that's figured out, I've had no issues at all with anybody doing work in that regards. And obviously sometimes, some people like are not as structured with it, and they're there for me to help them get structured. So I just have to structure them to do it. And then once that's done, they're out and running,
100%. Yeah. It's interesting because for years, I've been in sales on and off, my whole career and professional career. And, one way or another. And for me, it was always chasing. It was always, specifically in financial services. I've been in financial services since like 2011, and from different iterations, from working in a bank to owning an insurance agency to being an independent financial planner to being a fiduciary and an investment manager. So kind of like all these different capacities. And up until I became a fiduciary and investment manager, I was always chasing clients and essentially throwing spaghetti against the wall and hoping something stuck. And always January 1 would come around and I'd have to restart again. And it was just like this. It was a business model I knew wasn't sustainable. And it was a business model that I knew was just a matter of time before I got into doing what I'm doing now, which is 100% what you're talking about. And I even say this to clients. I'm like, I date my clients. I make sure that when they come in, it's a good fit for both of us. Are we going to like each other? Are we going to be able to work with each other? And are we going to make money with each other? And there's a whole thing behind that. But basically it's like, now I hand select the people that I want to work with that want to work with me. And it's made my business so elegant. So it removes any pains in the asses that may come into the business that may be like not in alignment with how I operate. And again, kind of going back to sharing your story, like if I talk to someone on the front end that doesn't agree with my background, which thankfully like no one has, but because they understand who I am as a person and that I'm a heart-centric guy and that I can do the job. But at the end of the day, like if that's an issue coming in the onboarding process, which is really big in my business, then we're not going to be a good fit. I'll find you somebody else. And then from there, personality assessments and how you operate and all these different things. Like I operate in that sense as well, because I really want to get to know how to be the best version of me for a client when they come on board. And the second piece that I thought of when we were talking about there was, did you follow any kind of modeling outside of, I think his name's Trevor. Is there like a structure, like you see these companies out there like Landmark Coaching and these different coaching companies that teach you how to be a coach in terms of the processes? Yeah. Maybe not the personality, maybe not the experience or your own beliefs, but the process, there's a structure. Have you ever worked within those paradigms or have you come from a school of thought, like where you operate in a certain way when it comes to coaching?
Okay. Great question. So this is for anybody who wants to go into that industry and doesn't necessarily know how to as a coach or speaker or whatever. If you don't necessarily know how to, and you kind of feel like lost in between, 100% I suggest for anybody to go research which ones are the best programs and invest in those programs. Because whatever you're going to learn from there is going to help you out. And it's going to give you a base. Now, for me, like I said, I went into coaching not at all thinking that I wanted to become a coach. Yeah. For me, I didn't even see it. You know, what's crazy when it's like you're right in front of something, but you don't teach, you need an outside perspective. Yes. It was one of my good friends that he's a phenomenal real estate recruiter in Montreal, like one of the top ones in Canada. And as we were talking about, doing my career change and I was becoming a speaker, he kind of slapped me across the face. And he's like, Chris, what are you doing? He's like, why don't you do coaching as well? Because speaking gig is a bit more far and few in between. Right. But he's like, you could do like a passive income through coaching and it's going to help you be a better speaker. I'm like, oh, I don't want to be that cliche speaker, coach and all that. He's like, what are you talking about? That cliche? He's like, you are that person. And then I'm like, oh, right. I'm like, wait a minute. You're absolutely right. I already do this. I just don't charge for it. And if I want to bring more value, I have to charge for it. Yes. So for me, I had it within me innately just through my curiosity. So I didn't need more than that, because as I was knowing that that's where we want to go towards, able to structure out just by seeing how my coaches did their things, what I like, what I didn't like, and then went from there. Obviously, I've always continually educated myself, got an NLP a practitioner degree and all that stuff that I already honestly knew at a very high level, but I always try to check what's that 10% that I don't know that I want to go get. So that's the way that I went about it. So if anybody wants to go into it and doesn't know necessarily how, I would 100% suggest to go towards that and start off as well to look at what are your pain points. What is your hero journey, your personal hero journey? Like Jess, you mentioned your hero journey, which is you went through some difficulties with drugs, with consumption, and then you overcame that. Mine was dyslexia and overcoming that, the financial burdens and all that fun stuff. And then from there, once you have that story, how do you present that story for people to be like, oh, wow, I love what you did. And I love the way you came out of it. How can I get some of that? So once a new coach is able to present themselves as what is their hero journey, like they've done actually something in life for people to be interested in, then they get attracted to you. So that's two things that people don't necessarily understand, because right now it's very alluring, to be quite honest, this personal development industry becoming like $1 billion industry, if not more than that, per freaking year. For sure. And people are like, hey, let me be coach. Let me be coach. Everybody's making money. Yeah. Okay, fine. You're making money, but how many years does it take to really get to that point to be a high-end coach? And for that to happen, you have to go through certain life experiences. Then you put the structure and systems in place for you to succeed as a coach, a speaker within your business.
I love it, man. And so playing devil's advocate here, because I've been approached multiple times as a financial advisor. I'm a coach. I'm a financial coach essentially, but I'm more than that, because I work in the spirituality world. I work in the health and wellness world. It's full spectrum. It's not just one thing. And I've had people come to me and say, you should think about being a life coach. And like, you hear that sometimes, and you know that there's positive and negative. There's good stuff, and there's a negative connotation sometimes, depending, just like sales. Like, I've been in sales for years, and sales can be positive or negative, and it all depends on how you believe and what you present yourself as, and if you operate with integrity, and that's all that matters. But at the end of the day, you know, there's a lot of people that want to be coaches. There's a lot of people that have courses and programs, and you get, you know, you look on Instagram for any amount of time, and if you talk about a couple of these things, the algorithm will pick up on it. And all of a sudden you'll start getting hit with like this person's offer and this person's offer and this person's 10-day course to mastery and like all this different shit that's out there. How do you separate yourself personally? How did you separate yourself? And I kind of have an idea, but you know, in terms of maybe someone who's not you and they're just starting out in coaching because they feel the call, they feel the need, they feel like they would, you know, be able to add value. How does someone get started in the landscape of coaching today in 2022?
Okay. Let's put this practical for you and your audience. Let's bring it to specifically. So you said right now, and if you permit, you said that right now you're a financial coach, right?
Yeah.
And you've gotten a lot of your clients be like, hey, you should be a life coach as well. Is that a question that you, Jesse, you're thinking about, like, hey, maybe I should do that shift?
For me personally, and a lot of my people know this, I've shifted into the world of like spirituality and plant medicines. And so I'm actually exiting financial planning personally. And I'm going to go into more of the teaching and guiding on the spirituality side, but that's full spectrum. That'll still include financial planning conversations. That'll still include health and wellness, like biohacking stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm personally being led that way.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
So now here's the question, or here's the way to kind of approach it, or the way I would go about it.
Yep.
First thing you have to find out is, what is your main thing? Like, imagine if you still want to be that financial person, cool. That's what you're going to do. If you want to be that spiritual person, cool. That's what you're going to do.
Yep.
But here's what's important. Any program you take, the ones that are really high quality and you get results out of it, the finance, the health, the spirituality, that's legit 20%. The 80% of that course that gets you to that point to do that 20% is the mindset, the psychology that you need. What's that? That's quote unquote life coaching. So you're already doing it. So here's the thing. Clients are coming to you for a specific thing. Now, they're coming to you for that. Let's say financial situations. Imagine you're like, hey, I'm in financial difficulty. I have X amount of credit cards, X, Y, and Z. They're coming to you for that.
Yes.
You're going to give them everything they need to succeed to solve that problem. But you're not only going to give them what they want, you're going to give them what they need.
Which is already been happening. Yeah.
What they need, they're not able to verbalize it, but you as a coach, you're able to see it. And that's the life coaching side. So I think you're already doing it in the righteousness that you're doing. Right now, the question that you have, Jesse, is, do I shift from the finance thing? Do I go into the spiritual thing? And if that's a spiritual thing, then we do that shift and you're like, you're the spiritual guy and you word it the way you want or whatever the case is. But even throughout that spiritual, that's that 20%. And then you get that 80% to how to have that mindset to get to that point, to utilize that 20% consistently.
That's beautiful.
That's the way I would approach it. So everyone has a hero's journey. It has to be clear what it is, but anything you do, first and foremost, is the mindset before going into the nitty gritty of the actual work in itself.
You keep mentioning hero's journey. Have you read Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey?
I haven't. Brother, but it's on my read list. I haven't that one. Tell me about it.
So powerful. It's you're already talking about it because you've lived it, but just it's about going into your journey and really stepping into who you are. And Hollywood bases most of their movies on this. It's like you go out on an adventure and you seek something and you go out and you kind of find it, but maybe it's not what you thought it was. And so now you kind of do the soul searching, and then like maybe you step into the cave, so to speak, fight the monster, or you do a dark night of the soul and you come back a changed person. It's just like this whole cyclical thing. But Joseph Campbell does it in the sense of psychology. He does it in the sense of kind of making it make sense in terms of your personal journey. But you've said it a couple of times, and I didn't know if you've read the book.
I haven't, but I'm very much aware of what you're talking about. These are concepts that I'm aware of. So actually, if you don't mind, brother, I'm going to tell you how I read my books, and it's kind of going to give you the answer of why I'm talking about it without reading that content, but I've read several other books. So I'm somebody that reads a minimum of 3 books at the same time. Okay. And these 3 books that I read are 3 different categories. Now, why do I do that? It's because previously I used to read one book cover to cover, and then once it's finished, started another book cover to cover. But it wasn't sustainable for me to read a book a week. Why that is because people have feelings, and we have moods, and you want to be able to read with that mood. So there's certain times I'm reading a book that's very cognitive, very heavy, interesting, but there's certain times during the day, you're not going to want to sit down and read a cognitive heavy book. You want to sit down and read something more light, like a Harry Potter. But that being said, my goal is still to read a book a week. So I have 3 categories. The first category of book that I read is something that's already in my professionalism. So personal development, the mindset stuff, the peak performance stuff, the brain science and all that stuff that I'm already really good at.
Yes.
I continue reading it. I read it a bit faster because I already know, let's say 90% of all the things that's going to be written in that book, but I still keep on reading it because it's a good refresh and I could get that 10%. Yep. That's the first category. So something that I'm already good at, my professionalism. The second category to look at is something that I want to learn new, that I'm really want to get into it, but it's completely new. That's the book that I sit down and I read more cognitively. I might be highlighting a bit more like you're in school and so on and so forth. So if you want, I don't know, learn about human behavior, sit down and read it. And then you can read a bunch of books. You're like, oh, wow, I got really good at that. And then go into the first category. And the last category is books that I read when it comes to, I want to relax more. So just more audiobooks. Maybe it's like I said, a Harry Potter. I'm a huge fan of that, or
nice.
a biography that you learn so much from. Will, the one that I'm reading right now, whatever the case is. So as I have these 3 different categories, even though I haven't read that particular book, I've seen it so much in other ways or other books that got me to that knowledge, and I get it through other ways. But it's still in that. If it's a book that's recommended, it's still on my list. I'm getting towards it essentially. So that's the way I kind of approach it. And from doing that structure, it's impossible that you miss any new way of learning, new way of doing thing, or anything that's not going to be in a book in the future, essentially.
Yeah. And you found what works for you. Some people listen to, I'm a an auditory learner. So listening to, podcast or Audible books, is the way I learn. It's rare that I pick up a hard copy and read it, but I've done that too. And so like, once you learn your way of learning that's best for you, I mean, you're off to the races and you become unstoppable. I love that you're also reading Will. How far have you gotten into that book, and what's jumped out at you about it?
So I have like 10% left. So I'm at 90% right now. And audiobooks is the same way that I do it as well. I have usually either I'm listening to it and have the physical book, or I'm just listening to it. So I always have the audio format of it. The Will Smith book, I'm a huge fan of Will Smith, like Same. Legit. There's like a couple of people that I really look up to in this world, and like an external perspective. And Will Smith is one of that person, just because how he goes through certain ideologies, challenges, how he is with his family, just an outside perspective. Obviously, I don't know him in an in-depth level. I feel like it's somebody that I want to model my life towards in certain regards.
Yep.
I love the book because he goes into so much details of how he started with fame, what he did with it, what's his perception of every single failure, up, down, and beyond. And there's so many great wisdoms within it. As simple as he's like, what is the universe? Like there was a part of it in it talking about the universe and the calling and so on and so forth, and how to go about it. There's a concept of how success is perceived in society. And, you're talking about a hero's journey, like, especially in North America, we're very much like that, like underdog wave, like, oh my God, yeah, succeed, underdog. And then once you succeed, you're like, oh, wow. But then once you start continuing succeeding, at a certain point, people are going to want you to fail because they love that underdog story. And then once you fail, they want you to come back up. Yep. So understanding certain things like this, and he's explaining it through his life journey, is just amazing. And I love reading like biographies. A couple other ones that I would suggest is Bob Iger's biography, which he was the CEO of Disney.
Yep.
Amazing. Creativity Inc., which is the biography about the 2 founders other than Steve Jobs of Pixar. Yep. The Steve Jobs one is great as well. Michelle Obama and Barack Obama's The Promise and Welcome, if I'm not mistaken. Michelle Obama's, that's what the book is called. So many things that you can learn from these great leaders. And if you think about it, Jesse, let's take it like 50, 70 years back. We wouldn't have access to these people's thought patterns as much as we have now. Yep. So to not be able to take these informations would be foolish if you're somebody that wants to learn more and teach others. Because what are the chances you're going to have to sit down with a world leader, with a phenomenal actor, with a philosopher from the early, 300 BC,
Yeah.
such as Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, or whatever, or Roman emperor such as Marcus Aurelius. So it's really important to take this information, because I don't know if you've ever written a book, Jesse. I'm currently writing one right now. I'm co-authoring it. It's been over 2.5 years that I've been writing it.
Wow.
So I know how much time it takes and all the knowledge that they put in. All you have to do is pick it up and read those 200 pages, because those 200 pages are like packed with great information if you're getting the proper books. So that's my ideology with that.
Yeah, that's beautiful, brother. And I've been potentially led to go check out Will's book, but I also, because something that intrigued me about his book, and I don't know if it's in the book or maybe hopefully I'm not misheard this somewhere, but does he talk about his work with plant medicines in the book? Has he brought that up by any chance? Because he recently came out and talked about he's done like 10 different ayahuasca ceremonies. Like he's worked with plant medicines. And I heard that it's in the book. Have you read about that in the book?
I haven't yet. So maybe it's in the back
Hopefully
end.
I didn't ruin it for you.
No, you didn't. Because I'm, as you know, actually we spoke about this, but we didn't mention it here. I'm very much intrigued within that universe as well. A couple of years back, I did a 10-day silent meditative retreat, Vipassana, and it was one of the most difficult and most rewarding things I've ever done in my life.
No question.
So I know the value of what it is to meditating. I know that the brain science behind what we're doing, there's so much ways to access that in a faster way through certain hallucinogenic drugs and beyond.
Plant teachers,
Plant teachers, exactly. That's I like that, the plant teachers.
And like indigenous, and even not even indigenous now, it's mainstream, but it's been around for tens of thousands of years. But that was something that intrigued me about that book. But also you talk about people, like Will Smith, like for me, guys that I think that, and girls that I think that are inspiring, doing a good thing in the world, that are famous. You look at Will Smith, you look at Shaquille O'Neal. Shaquille O'Neal is amazing at like giving back to community and being a good human being. And another guy's Matthew McConaughey. And Matthew McConaughey, he's worked with psychedelics before, and it's changed his life. And his book Green Lights talks about it, and that's a book that's really cool. And so it's interesting that all these things are kind of bubbling up to the surface. But just getting back to you and your story and your journey, what are you looking forward to? So you're looking at 2022. It's a brand new year. It's January 10th is the recording of this episode. It'll be out in a week or two, so it'll be timely. But what are you working on? I know you're working on a book. What is it that you're looking to put out in the world in the next year or two? Yeah,
that's a loaded question this time of year, because I'm somebody that's very goal driven, structured that way. I have certain things that I do every single end of the year and beginning of the year, from my RPM, which is my rapid planning method, to my vision board I redo every single year, to my yearly affirmation. And then I look at what do I need within the business of Dedeyan Enterprises for my mission and vision. What are the goals? What are the goals that I need to accomplish as the CEO and founder? What are my employees need to do, and so on and so forth. So right now, the main thing within everything that I'm doing personally, I want to connect more with the universe this year. It's like, that's the main thing for me, having more connection, which I've always had, but the last 2021, I took a step back at it. And so I'm like, hey, let me reconnect. There's something that was missing there in a higher level. So I want to be more connected with the universe, God, and beyond. Next thing that I want to look at is honestly my personal life. I'm 32 years old, work my face off, and I work extremely hard, but I don't want life to pass me by without having a future wife, kids, and beyond. So that's something that I was pushing away subconsciously or consciously for so long, because I built 2 businesses back to back, not having any time to breathe. And now I'm in a position that I have 9 employees. I could delegate a bit more. So I'm like, okay, cool. Let me look at that side of my life. And finally, within my business is the academy. I've been working on Dedeyan Academy, which God willing will be coming out soon in that regards. So understanding everything that I've learned through a speaker, through doing hundreds and hundreds of coaching calls, speaking in front of thousands and thousands of people. How do I put that in a concise way for people to digest through a online course platform, so I could help more and more people? Because my goal is to impact 1 billion lives positively. Now, that's something very outlandish. We're 7.8 billion people on this planet, and I'm audacious enough, crazy enough, stupid enough, maybe even to say that I want to impact 1 billion lives. And will I be able ever to really know if that's happened? Not really, but it doesn't matter. All I want is to position myself every single day to have the opportunity to impact 1 billion lives. So Jesse, we're having this great conversation, and this great conversation leads to you remembering something, telling your friends, leads to somebody hearing something like, hey, I heard this guy, Chris, talking about X, Y, and Z, tell somebody else, that person learns from it, tell somebody else. I have a little percentage of a ripple effect within that. That's all I want. I don't need to know who these people are, but I need to impact as much as possible. So everything I do within my life, I always look at, am I impacting people in a positive way with the action I'm taking? Am I moving that needle forward? So because I have that 1 billion mindset, I have to look at more expansion to the masses instead of that one-on-one. I'll always do that one-on-one because it's extremely fun, but it's not scalable. It's physically impossible. And the way that I run my business, I only do coaching Mondays and Tuesdays. The rest of the days, Wednesdays, I do my content creation for YouTube, podcast, blog, so on and so forth. Thursdays, I'm booked in meetings back to back. Fridays, more meetings. I have my philanthropy work and so on. So I'm like, if I want to impact more people, the only way I'm going to do it is create something that's going to be able to help me work in a passive or semi-passive level.
Yep. Love it, brother. Well, I'll be the first one from the audience and the listeners and the viewers to say thank you for sharing your journey, sharing your story, being who you are, being a badass, but being a down-to-earth, empathetic, caring, strong human being that just shares their journey and is able to touch the lives of many. And you will touch the billion lives. And I'll share a story with you as we jump off really quickly about something very similar with the use of plant medicine. So at the end of the day, brother, thank you so much for you. Thank you so much for your story and sharing. And we look forward to more to come from Chris Dedeyan, but he's the mighty, the powerful Chris Dedeyan. I'm Jesse T. Be sure to catch us on next week's episode of the Jesse T Show.